Welcome. We're going to do some debugging with Eclipse. We're going to be debugging our Java programs. What do we want to get done today? Well, we want to understand what debugging really means, mainly, and to be able to actually debug our Java programs using Eclipse. So what does that really mean? We want to be able to trace the state of our program, that is the value of our variables, as it runs throughout execution. Usually we do this because we've discovered that for whatever reason our program is not producing the results we want, so we want to debug it or get the bugs out. The debugger in Eclipse has a very important attribute. It gives us the ability to inspect or determine what the variable values are, to inspect our variables in the methods and also in the objects that our methods have reference to at any point in the execution of our program. Let's get a few basic terms and then we're going to get into Eclipse and actually try it. First term, breakpoint, very important when we're debugging. That's going to place our classes. We want to put a breakpoint in our code wherever we want our programs to stop or suspend. We want them to temporarily stop. Why? So that we can inspect our variables. We want to find out what are the values of all of our variables while our program is suspended. After we've looked at the variables and everything looks good, we want to execute the program some more and stop at a point later on. We can either stop one step into the program, or we can just resume execution. If we resume execution, the program will execute until it hits another breakpoint. If we step through our program, it's going to execute a single line or a single piece of a statement at a time. There's two versions of this, stepping into and stepping over. Stepping into means if the next thing to do is a method call, we're actually going to go to that method call and be able to step through that method to see what's going on inside the method. The other way we can do it is step over it. If the next thing to do is to call a method, stepping over it says we don't want to go into that method, we just want to be there when it returns to inspect our variables. Well, how do we do this in Eclipse? Everything's going to happen from the Run menu, similar to running a Java application. On the Run menu, there is a Run as Java application, and there's also a Debug as a Java application. There's also some icons that we can choose to use, but we don't have to. We can do it from the Run menu. Let's do it that way for now. If we say debug our program as an application, we're starting off execution, as always in a Java application, in some class with a main method. We will enter the debug perspective. If you're queried, do you want to enter the debug perspective? You just want to say yes. The debug perspective in Eclipse is a set of windows or panes that have information to do with the debug process. One of the most important windows is going to be our variable window, and that's where we're going to inspect the contents of our variables. And then we can do our execution after we've examined our variables. We can resume execution, do that from the Run menu, or for ease, let's just hit an F8 key, Function 8 key, or we can step into or step over, again from the Run menu, or using F5 or F6. Breakpoints, how do we set them in Eclipse? Well, when we're in our editor, in the regular Java perspective, we can set breakpoints by clicking on, there's a blue border on the left-hand side of the editor window. If we double-click on that little blue border, we should get a little blue ball. That places a breakpoint there. That's going to be where execution will stop if we run it as a debug application. If we want to remove a breakpoint, we can double-click on that little blue dot and it will go away. So let's get into Eclipse and try it. I want you to get out your Eclipse, download Certificate of Deposit.java and CD Tester. Certificate of Deposit represents an investment that takes a certain balance. It has a certain term of years and has a certain interest rate. After that term and that interest rate, it will have a value. Our program is supposed to calculate what is the value of our certificate of deposit at the end of the term. So we're going to want to see what happens each interest cycle. Here we've assumed annual interest rate, but we could have easily done it on a monthly basis to see what the value of our CD is each year as it matures by using the debugger. So download the .java code, open up Eclipse, and follow along with the Eclipse demo. Okay, hope you've opened up your Eclipse. I have my Eclipse open, and I've dragged and dropped certificate of deposit and cdtester.java out of Blackboard. Here's what certificate of deposit is. It keeps track of the original amount of certificate of deposit, the interest rate, and the number of years. That gets passed into it via the constructor and sets the instance variables. The method of interest here is get final value. Get final value is going to loop through one time for every year of the CD, calculate the interest, and then calculate the new balance. So it'll loop through it for as many years as we say, and then it's going to return the amount of money that it's worth. Okay, over here in the CD tester, we're going to create a certificate of deposit for $1,000 at 6% interest for 10 years. Then we're going to ask for the final amount. We're going to ask our certificate of deposit object for the final amount. And then we're going to print it out. Notice I've used a printf so that our output can be formatted nicely. Okay, if I run that, let me get rid of those for now. If I run it normally, just as a run as a Java application, it comes up and it says the final amount is 1,790.85. We'd like to know what happens to the variables inside of the certificate of deposit each year. So we're going to try and debug it. In order to debug, first thing you have to do is set a breakpoint. I'm going to set a breakpoint right here. That's going to stop execution right before we make our certificate of deposit. And then I'm also going to put a breakpoint right here, right after we've calculated the final amount and before we've displayed it. Okay, if you look at the Run menu, we have a Debug As. We can debug it as a Java application. And once we get into there, into the debug mode, we're going to have some additional things on the Run menu to take a look at. I'm going to click Debug as a Java application, and I get this request here. Do you want to use a debug perspective? Yes. Why? Because I want to be able to see the variables, and that's contained in the set of windows that we're going to see there. Okay, I'm going to move it up just a little bit. Down here we have our editors. Currently we are executing the program. We can see that because we have a little red square here. That means our program is running. We're sitting here getting ready to make this CD. We have pretty much nothing. First thing I'm going to step over, that's F6, and I've now created the certificate of deposit. I can expand that. I can find out what are the values in the certificate of deposit object: interest rate, original amount, and years equal 10. Okay, so I can take a look at that. Now I want to step into get final value. Now I could step into F5 or select it from the Run menu. I'm going to select F5 continually. F5. Notice I'm now in certificate of deposit at the first line. I'm going to continue to click F5 and execute this one statement at a time. I now have a value for money, which turns out to be $1,000. That was what we set it up as. The interest is 0. And we're going to loop through that. We've gone through at year 0, or actually at the end of year 1, we had an interest of $60, so our certificate of deposit is now worth $1,060. We did this for 10 years, so I can continually clicking through here. I don't think I really want to go through it, but I can look at each year and find out what the value is. Okay, so instead of stepping, I want to just resume. So I'm going to go resume or click F8, and that should get us all the way back into our main method. And here we are back in our main method, CD tester. And if we notice, we have up here, we have a final amount of 1,790.847. And so I'm going to I think I'm just going to resume and let it run till the end. And we should see our final amount down here in the console. And that concludes our debug session. One more thing though, if we want to go back and look at our old Java perspective, we go up here and click this. This will set the set of windows back to the Java perspective. We can also go to change our perspectives over here. This is a little bit easier. I'm just going to click on Java perspective, and we're back into our normal station. Okay, here's what we've done. We've gotten to look, inspect all the variables in certificate of deposit and CD tester as the program ran. We can then determine whether or not we have any issues. So that's it. Why don't you try it and see if you can do the same thing and debug your Java programs.